What's up, everybody? Mark with Cardivox Academy here, and I'm lighting the incense. I pretty much do this every video to keep out the stinky metal vocal demons away, but today we are going to need it. Today, we're checking out the recent vocal one take that Phil Bozeman put out for Hate Cult Ritual. I can't say it. Hate Cult Ritual. And I'm pumped because I love a good one take. I love a good one take. Here on the channel, if this is your first Cardivox Academy video, I do vocal analysis. I'm a full-time vocal coach. I teach people how to go or safely and efficiently so they don't hurt themselves and they can follow their vocal journey, follow their vocal dreams. And so on this channel, we do a ton of vocal analysis. That's all I do. And so if I have a one take, I can hear, generally without much production on the voice, what's going on. And it's also fun because if you are a big fan of Phil Bozeman, which you know that I am, I've had him on the channel, I think 2 or 3 times to talk about his voice. So if you like this video, make sure to go watch some of those other ones. And that's kind of all I got. I don't really have a much of an intro. Oh, I got to reposition myself here. I don't really have much more that I want to say to that because I kind of just want to watch this video. So let's check out the Phil Bozeman Hate Cult Ritual vocal one take. That's all I got. Let's do it. Let's do the double check. Yep, everything's recording everywhere. We're good. We're gravy. Here we go.
Moonlight steps through the cross. For Helios, he lies with us here through his neck. Our Mother Earth's foundation in knots. As she bears the new Lord like a miserable wretch. Irref, duref, forevico. Diras, ekrim, delas, and mark, eslau, folesi darau. We are disciples of a nation murder.
Already we're going to talk about some stuff. Now I'm going to start with the main thing that I know you all are going to ask about, because this is kind of a quick tutorial 101 thing. If you have been watching vocal tutorials online, clean singing or harsh vocalization, if you've been following vocal coaches, even myself, like this for any amount of time, especially when COVID hit, you will know that one of the biggest pieces of advice you get is don't breathe up into your chest. Don't breathe up into your chest. You know what I'm saying? And we're seeing a ton of that here. We're seeing now, this isn't me calling Phil out, so just bear with me here. Well, maybe it is a little bit. I don't know. But you're seeing a ton of that like clavicular breathing, that those shoulders coming up, right? So that creates an obvious point of contention in the mind of somebody who's watching this content, especially somebody who's brand new to vocals. Right? Wait a minute. I thought we weren't supposed to do that. Why is he doing it? His voice is fine. What am I missing? Well, you're actually right on all accounts. It is not very airflow efficient to breathe up and into your chest that way. Right? And the main reason for that is because when we're pressing down on our ribs, pressing down on our lungs with our chest muscles and our shoulders, when we're pulling the air up, they're just not opening and expanding the way as well as they could. And we're not actually able to move the air upwards as efficiently as we can with our abdominal muscles, right? And in regulating pressure underneath the diaphragm, right? So essentially, part of the reason you're not supposed to do that is because it's not super efficient. And if you don't have a good balance of airflow, this type of upward breathing, this up into the clavicle, up into the shoulder breathing is often paired with discomfort, pain, and strain in the throat, right? A lot of times when I have a student who is having these issues, it's paired with this. We remove this, the pain and strain. It's not a magic cure. It doesn't go away, but it improves greatly. So there's a question there, right? There's a question in between these two truths. One is that it's not very efficient to breathe up into your chest like this. And it does often correlate with pain and strain in the voice. Not always, but often, right? And when I'm talking purely harsh vocalization here. The other is that Phil's voice is fine. As far as we know, right? I don't know of any issues he's ever had, and he's killing it so far. So where's the difference? Well, I'm going to kind of soapbox a little bit here. I know this is a lot of talking at the beginning of the video, but I think this is very valuable. Oftentimes, this is something that we have to think about when we're doing analysis, is oftentimes just because one thing is happening, it doesn't mean that another thing is not happening, right? we tend to subconsciously view things very, very binary. And so we would see this and we'd be like, that's wrong. And it's true. What we're seeing here, not very efficient. This does not mean that there is no expansion of the ribs and the abdominal muscles, right? This does not mean that he's not engaging those core muscles. This does not mean that he's not engaging, like I said, regulating the pressure underneath the diaphragm to manage the air pressure that is being utilized to make these sounds, right? So these things aren't necessarily mutually exclusive. To me, what I see, and the other thing is what we hear, incredibly even air tone or airflow, right? Really even distortion. Very difficult to have like longer phrases and regardless of the length of the phrase, even distortion unless you have well-managed air. So we have a visual cue, but we also have the context of the experience that he's had, how long he's been doing this for. The fact that his voice sounds great pretty much all the time. I don't know if you've seen any of the clips that have been going around from the recent tour, but damn, right? And the fact that as far as we know, he doesn't have any vocal damage, as far as we know, right? So what I see here, and again, I'm asking this because I'm taking so much time on this because I know so many people are going to ask me about it. You probably my students one-on-one. What I'm seeing here is exactly who Phil is, one of the OG deathcore vocalists who taught himself, as far as I know, 90% of the way, and is doing about a bajillion things correctly, but has some remnant habits from back in the day, some sort of like not emergent properties. What's the word for like the traits that we have that are no longer evolutionarily valuable but aren't necessarily vestigial properties? Maybe it is like the little nub on the back of your ear. Basically, there are things that we see visually about us that are remnants of evolutionary stages that were valuable and are not valuable now. And I'm trying to use that as an analogy for some of the things that he picked up from being an early vocalist back in the like early 2000s, and they're just kind of still around. That's my take on what we're seeing here. Now, we're going to talk about actual distortion and grit and everything soon, but I know that that's going to be a point of confusion for a lot of people who are vocal enthusiasts and trying to make sense of what they see and what people tell them online, what their vocal coaches tell them, what their friends tell them. Hopefully, and again, this is just my take from seeing it for the first time, but that's what I would say. Let's keep going though.
Forsaken, black hole by his blood. Oh, what's my name reach? Now riveted as an boxers me on the side. Rivers of wine, tainted by the mother's disease-ridden cavern. Into the night we dine and worship our Lord who we've died.
Couple things I want to talk about here. So first thing I want to talk about is how even and consistent his tone is, right? How even and consistent his tone is. It is nuts. Now, when I'm talking about even and consistent tone, what I'm talking about is some vocal styles are really inherently chunky, right? Really inherently chunky. The false chord fundamental, that's really a chunky style, right? Really roiling. Other styles have this like really sharp TV static sound, right? You can think about like your typical like piercing high fry scream, right? That pitchless sound that you hear in a lot of deathcore bands do, right? What we have with Phil is this really high, and I think his tone is so identifiable, right? If you've been listening to deathcore and metal for a long time, then you'll know what I'm talking about. Is we have this closure, right? We have this closure, which creates more of a TV staticky tone, but we still have some of the chunk, right? We still have some of the chunk. And I think that the balance that he has is really chef's kiss, right? Now, how do we do that, right? This is an interesting question because a lot of the times, especially if you're an aspiring or current deathcore vocalist, you want to have different tones. You want to have different colors and textures. You want to have different things that you can do. Right. And it can be confusing because you find that, you spend however long finding a tone, let's say like, right, there's your tone, right? And you're like, okay, it took me this long to find a tone on that, like that tone alone, and now I'm supposed to change it up slightly. So one thing that you will find, and I'm going to talk mostly about mids and lows here, and I'm going to speak kind of simplistically. I'm going to make things sound kind of binary that aren't necessarily so binary, but you know, I'm not going to make this an hour and a half long video. But oftentimes when we're talking about that, especially across the whole board, but especially in the realms of mids and lows, is tissue rigidity, right? I don't know why it was hard for me to say that. And what I mean is the stiffness of the tissue. Keep it PG in the comments. I know you. But you can kind of see an example of that here, right? Loose tissue rigidity. Tight tissue. Right? You can also balance that with airflow, right? Loose rigidity, low airflow. Loose rigidity, high airflow. Loose or tight, low. Tight, high. Right? So you get different tones. So you can have something that's like low and chunky. You can tighten it up. You can start pushing more air at it. Right? And you get different colors and tones and textures. And one of the best ways to do this is to find the loosest version of what you have. Make sure it's, you know, positioned properly, not painful, straight, all these things, right? Make it super loose. Make it almost too loose, right? Like that's not a scream that I would ever like actually track. I wouldn't even call that a scream, more of an ingredient, right? But you're going to take it and you're going to slightly go, I'll use my clean voice to show you. You're going to slightly, gently, and upward go, ha, 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 ha. And the back of your tongue might go, it might not. The soft palate might go, it might not. Depends on the way that you scream. But your goal here is to like play around with different levels of closure. Now, again, I was using my clean voice, so it's very easy to hear the sort of idea that I'm going for. But if I do this with, again, this really low, rumbly, clacky sound, you know, sorry, I had to burp. If I do it with this really low, rumbly, clacky sound, you know, I have this, again, too loose, right? I'm going to slowly close in on it. So then I can have different levels of closure, different types of tone. I can have like a, you know, or maybe somewhere in between, right? And he has this like really almost 50-50 balance that is absolutely just stellar. And a lot of that comes with, again, good breath support. Let's keep going.
We kill, we face, we conquer, we on. We kill, we face, we conquer, we on. We kill, we face, we conquer. We are disciples of outrage and murder. With the rage from through us.
I want to talk about that he just did, right? One thing about extreme harsh vocalization, metal vocals, whatever we want to call it, that I enjoy is because, you know, I do a ton of clean singing in the band I'm the vocalist in, Kardashev, but I have more fun with screaming. And I think the reason that I have more fun with screaming is because a lot of the rules when we get to harsh vocals are more bendy, right? Like in clean singing, for example, you never just smush down your vocal tracks. Not that I'm aware of anyway, okay? Not that you wouldn't never sing like, you know, you should spend my life in the ballroom. You wouldn't do that. Nobody would listen to that. But if you want to do like a really like punchy, like you can close and then open and bam, there's so much room for contrast that can be done in ways that you don't get with clean singing because of the conventions of what we think sounds good. Now, that's not to say that harsh vocalization is inherently more dynamic. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying we can introduce dynamics using tools that you don't normally hear in harsh vocalization. And this grunt, again, just kind of for the first time, although I've heard the song plenty of times, in this one take, right, I hear like a very like if I'm doing this, my vocal space, right, if you were to imagine my mouth as like the top of a tube, right, it is tiny. I'm just imagining smushing this whole thing down. And then I'm puckering my lips and sort of pushing my tongue forward. Now, these types of vocal tract shapes tend to work better with a more compressed vocal style. Like if you just do like a basic false chord through it, it's still going to sound interesting, but because false chord on a fundamental level is so loosey-goosey and chunky, which kind of leads people to think that it's not very useful, but some of the best fucking vocalists out there use just fundamental false chord tones. If I take this, you'll hear a difference, right? So if I take my supraglottal tissues, right, the epiglottis, the arytenoids, the area epiglottic folds, the stuff that you clear your throat with, right, and I close it up, mostly, we get a sound like this. Whoa! We get a sound like that, right? And if I put that through that small shape, sounds pretty cool. I think it sounds pretty cool. If I do like just like a basic, hey, whoa, ooh, it's not quite the same. So you can still get some cool stuff through there, Well, that's my normal style. But if you're getting that sound versus a sound that's more similar to what Phil's doing, it's probably fundamentally the type of distortion you're doing. But I also love how he took that and opened up to this. It's like he sort of like pulled it out and just threw it. Anyways, let's keep going. Very cool.
Mountains implode, leaving nothing but its deep basin. Blemish way comes the days of the single blood that we breathe in. Mark the holy wire, behind strip from his holy dire. The arm of the road fought.
Those highs were very like Trevor Strinati. Those highs were very Trevor Strinati, like this balance of you could hear just a touch of vocal cord influence, and then this like very like slappy distortion that doesn't have like a lot of airflow sound coming through it, right? Which is really, I've never, whoops, just kicked my other pair of headphones. Yeesh. Not to my, maybe early on, back when they were like first hitting the scene, back, when they had a MySpace page of like 500 followers or something like that. So we're going back. Maybe I saw them live, but I don't remember. But I feel like this is the first time I've ever heard his highs so just raw and forward like that. And it was a lot more Trevor Strnad sounding than I had anticipated. But that space where he hit right at the beginning, I don't do highs like him, so I'm going to do some highs to show you some airflow stuff. It's not going to sound like that. But one thing that we can do a lot of times, I'll get students and they have a very common request. I want my highs to be higher. Of course, we all do, right? That's a very good goal. Problem is, what they'll do is they'll try to take distortion that they're already using and the same vocal that they're already using, and they'll just push it upwards, right? Well, if you can't make what you're currently doing higher, doing what you're currently doing and trying to push it higher kind of is counterintuitive, right? So one of the best ways that you can get your highs higher is to play around with just plain air, straight up, whisper scream, right? Now, I'm not saying whisper scream for your final scream. I'm saying that you can utilize a whisper to calibrate and understand what changes in your vocal tract shape will do to the perceived tone that comes out of your face, right? Don't just push on a whisper really hard and scream, right? Someone clip it. Nobody ever does. This time they will. But so here's what I mean. Right. And this is a technique that I use, or not a technique, but a method that I use to get my highs higher back in the day. Right. So, my normal high is like a right. It's that sort of sound. And if I take that, there's a vocal tract shape there. There has to be. The sound of our voice is the shape of our vocal tract. Right. Among other things. But if I take that, that's more of a bright mid. So that's where that high lives. What if I take that sound? I don't worry about distortion. I let myself worry about that later. I take that sound and I point it upwards. Ooh, what's that? And that, it sounds kind of raw, but on an album, it sounds sick, right? And so if you want to do things like that, play around with just your airflow. That high that he hit was absolutely nuts. I kind of got distracted by that. I did hear a little bit of pitch coming through on those screams at the end, which was sick, but let's keep going. Because if you've heard this song before, you know that there's still some cool stuff to happen. So here we go.
On the soul, subterranean blasphemous sons of the one that we worship. We mock, burn, and spit on the cross. Burn and spit on the cross. Legends, goddamn, flesh and bone, and the carcass. Left to one of the future giants. The golden carriage, similar to scriptures, whispering in the ears of eternity.
I'm going to pause it there because of what's coming up. So I want to talk about different, maybe I'll just talk about one or two, but I want to talk about different ways that we can shape our vocalization, right? So let's say, for example, you have a basic mid, right? And again, let's use something more compressed, right? Which means that there's more closure in the tissues above the vocal folds. That's what I mean when I say that. And it sounds to you kind of bland, right? Yeah. A lot of times what will happen is people, especially new vocalists, they'll have that, but it'll sound bland. And so they'll start over from scratch. They'll be like, I must be doing something wrong here. Oh, hold on. Look at the mouth shapes. Right? If you watch these vocalists, you can see how much of this is controlled by mouth shape. So, and this is nothing new. This is something that if you've, scrubbed Reddit or other places, that mouth shape is important for all vocalization, but has a very strong impact in genre association with deathcore, right? Because if I take that mid, right, that mid that just tonally it's textbook good, but kind of boring, right? What I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of maybe push my tongue forward and round my lips a little bit. Whoa. Now that's more interesting, right? Maybe I'll take my tongue and I'll curl it up slightly and maybe curl my tongues back over my teeth like grandpa lips, right? Maybe push them out, right? And like let my tongue hover in the middle of my mouth. It's like a sort of situation. That's probably going to be the thumbnail. Jesus Christ. Something like that, right? And we see a lot of these drop jaw, sometimes forward, lips curled stances or oral postures, right? In this playthrough that are part of what gives Phil such powerful, right? Such powerful tone. Such powerful tone. Let's hear the part. Let's hear the part. So yeah, then let's talk about that guttural. Let's talk about that guttural. So we had like one thing that's fun to do. You don't need to do it, and I'm not going to do it now. Is like you listen to a guttural, especially one that has that much movement, that much vowel modulation, and you go through it and you write out the vowels. So like E or like U, O, A, E or something like that. But one thing he did, this is something that I don't know where it started. It's been around for fucking ever, frickin' ever. But it's when you take a guttural and as you finish the guttural, you lift it up to either an E or an I. Oh, love that. Whenever I hear a vocalist do that, you can guarantee that I'm at least going to like enjoy the song a little bit more than I was before if I wasn't. It's a weird way to say I like it, but I really love that tone. And you know, it has like this or like a right? Oh, something about that. It's like filling up a jug. You know, when the water gets to the very, very top, that frequency changes. That's an I or maybe an E now. I just think that's so cool. It does it very well. I also love the way that he brightens up the tone when I can't remember what the lyrics are. Dun, dun, spit on the cross, bum, bum, spit on the cross, I think is what he's saying. And you can see that he opens up, drops his jaw. His voice starts aiming this way, so we get less of a dark tone, more of a bright tone. Again, a lot of change with a lot is controlled with vowel modulation. Although some of that I would imagine is laryngeal position as well, right? Sometimes what will happen is we talk about how important mouth shape is in deathcore vocalization, harsh vocalization, and then people will think that means that we don't do other things as well, but we do. Anyway, we're just at 32 minutes and I'm hoping to get another video done today. We'll see if I do. But sick as hell, it's going to be very hard. I don't know if I'm going to do a video on my album of the year because I haven't listened to a ton of new releases this year. But between this, the new Shadow of Intent and the new Carcosa, which I got right there. I don't know. It's going to be hard to decide. Like, I think the heaviest, just like the absolute like heaviest and most aggressive of the three, if that's your criteria, it's probably going to be Whitechapel for you. You know what I mean? And then there's the new Lorna Shore as well, which I'm still, people have been asking me if I'm still going to do a review of that. I would like to. It's kind of gotten far past, so it might be a little risky for the old algorithm. But I would like to still. I would like to still. But anyway, that's basically that. No surprise, excellent one take. New Whitechapel is awesome. Phil has a very, evergreen tone. And what I mean by that, it has not aged out. Sometimes there are vocalists who over time their style or their technique sounds dated. But I feel like Phil's tone has never gone out of style. It's been dope the entirety of his career and it's dope now, right? And from again, everything from everything we know, sustainable, right? So thank you all for watching. Great job, Phil. Many thanks, much love. I'm out.